Michelle stated, my name is Kara Ireland, and I'm going to be presenting to you my master's research. I've done most of my master's research on lesbian history, lesbian composition, and lesbian erasure. So I just want to share my abstract with you really quickly. Lesbian erasure negatively impacts the accessibility to literature, archives, and records of lesbian history as a result of being buried within queer and feminist discourse. As a result, scholars often classify lesbians into other categories, effectively rendering them invisible and unimportant. Across the literature, there is no cohesive definition of lesbian, and it is difficult to be exclusive on the basis of sex and gender. In addition, lesbian relationships are often dismissed as friendships. All of these factors have influenced my decision to create a website dedicated to promoting lesbian visibility and combating lesbian erasure. I've made a website entitled The Vast Unsaid in order to combat these microaggressions. The Vast Unsaid has a specific focus on the intimacy, love, romantic communications, and identity of lesbians. There are some online spaces that claim to promote lesbian interests, but instead serve the broader queer community at the expense of lesbian visibility. The intention of The Vast Unsaid is to create a space specifically for self-identified lesbians without racialized or gender constraints, because I don't believe that they should have to incessantly fight for visibility. So, where my project ended up is not where it began by any means. When I first started my capstone, I thought that I wanted to explore Black lesbianism because I took Dr. T's class called The Black Woman, and it changed my whole world, changed my life. And so by reading all of those materials, I thought that maybe I should do my capstone research on something that encompasses two facets of my identity as a Black lesbian woman. But as I started to gather resources and find my materials, I quickly realized that was a way too niche, way too narrow of a topic to delve into. So instead, I opened it up to just lesbian artifacts. I wanted to create an archival study of lesbian letters and lesbian correspondence, romantic lesbian correspondence, because I had done a paper in somewhere in my master's program on feminist rhetorics, where I basically did a rhetorical study of lesbian letters, where I noticed that they had a whole bunch of rhetorical strategies, such as like the art of ambiguity, or like not signing their sources, or not signing their names or anything like that. And so I thought that maybe I could just study a whole bunch of letters, because I only studied like maybe 5 or 6 for that paper. It was only like a 20-page paper. But for this project, I was like, well, I was really enjoying what I was doing, so I thought that maybe I could just find some more and just do that. And so I tried to find some more lesbian letters or lesbian artifacts, and I quickly realized, again, another dead end. So where are these lesbian letters? What can I do to find them? And honestly, I didn't really have a clear-cut goal when I started out my literature review. So my literature review was full of sources all from lesbian history, or lesbian authors themselves, or lesbian theorists who were writing about the same things that I was interested in, including the Lesbian History Group, Adrienne Rich, Layla J. Rupp, and Bonnie Morris. But most of these people, they were talking about something, but they were just theorizing the same things that I was theorizing, and it wasn't really new research that I could make out of their voices. So as a result, I decided to create my own website for that. So I bet you're probably wondering why I do a whole project dedicated to lesbians, and the reason I'm doing it dedicated to lesbians is because lesbians are often discredited, erased, and expunged from history. I mean, when there are women who self-identify as lesbian and they have like their biographies or something, it's often left out their personal history. It's called their romantic lives is left out of the equation entirely. So I decided to specifically dedicate my capstone research to this because there's a whole lot of research on Blackness, there's a whole lot of research on feminism, but in terms of like queer theory, there's like a lot of queer theory as well, but there's not so much on lesbians visibility in particular. So I decided to task myself with this by choosing this topic. I kind of got ahead of myself with this slide. The Vast Unsaid is my website title, but I'm not going to get into my website until a minute, because I want to show you my history of coming up with my capstone research in my literature review at first. So one of the main things that I was trying to figure out while I was doing my research was what even counts as lesbian. To many people, think that lesbian is any kind of girl who likes a girl, regardless of like if that girl, that perceived girl is non-binary, whether that girl is trans, whether that girl is whatever race she is, wherever she come from, like any two femme presenting people in contact with each other, that's lesbian. Now, that's not how I perceive